Hello and welcome to this video on the bonsai myths that lead beginner bonsai enthusiasts astray. If you're getting into bonsai, you might do so for rather romantic or idyllic reasons. For example, you see an exhibition, watching a movie or an anime, visiting a bonsai gallery. There are many ways you might be inspired to begin your bonsai adventure. This starting position is also a good place to trip right as you start. Face planting and failing is a very good way to stop being enthusiastic about bonsai. The problem is that many myths, misconceptions, and errors that have somehow become entrenched in society seem to be actively embraced and not challenged. These myths range from a simple misunderstanding of how bonsai works to a more significant problem that will inevitably kill your bonsai, all the way to outright misinformation that was never right and never will be. Let's start with a fairly common error, but one that is sort of true: keeping bonsai inside or indoors. To start with, the general rule is that bonsai cannot be kept indoors. They need natural light and air, or at least the semblance of such. That also means you can keep bonsai indoors permanently with the right setup. That is artificial light, air movement, and so on. On a much shorter time frame, you can bring bonsai indoors. This is rather obviously done for exhibitions where they're typically done inside and therefore the bonsai must be brought in. Occasionally there will be outdoors exhibitions, but these are an exception. The important thing is that the time indoors isn't a regular time indoors. By that we mean only every now and then, and not bring them inside for a week and then outside for a day or two. Instead, you can bring a bonsai inside for a few days, and then you put them back outside for several weeks. That is, simply put, the majority of the time must be spent outside. Despite everything we've just said, there are some species that are suitably kept indoors, practically all the time. These species would benefit from being outdoors, but they can survive inside, just with a somewhat handicapped development. This is perhaps the best example of the myths that permeate bonsai from the outside. They range from completely wrong to right, but in a very specific context that has been grossly distorted and exaggerated. And next we have the extremely wrong myth of the small bonsai pot keeps your bonsai small. No. While it is true the small pot may help to keep your bonsai small, it is not because the pot is small, but because this size limits how much the tree can grow until you need to repot said tree. Repotting the bonsai also involves one of two options. Either you prune the roots, or you pot the bonsai into a larger pot. Either way, the pot size does not stop the bonsai from growing big. If it gets to the point where the root has filled the pot, the bonsai will die, not stop growing. In a somewhat related myth, how does the bonsai stay small? Simply put, pruning. You cut branches back to maintain a shape, and you cut them off entirely to maintain size. This is the same basic concept as topiary or hedging. The difference is that the process accounts for not just the external appearance, but the internal branch structure too. In a tangential side note to this, root pruning does not keep the bonsai small either. The root pruning simply allows more room in the pot for soil that supports the growth of the bonsai. In a related myth, we have wiring. A wire also has no relationship to the size of the bonsai for the most part. That is, both in terms of the growth of it and everything else. The only relationship wire has to size is that bigger branches require bigger wire. Applying wire will not keep the bonsai small. If you were to hold that belief, you unfortunately wind up with wire cutting into branches, causing branches to die and drop off the tree, which is technically a form of pruning, just a very, very dangerous approach. Next is the somewhat less significant myth: bonsai are all wild or ancient trees. No, while it is true some bonsai have been collected from the wild, type of bonsai called yamadori, not all bonsai trees are. In fact, many are now grown specifically for bonsai. This is a similar process to a normal wholesale nursery that grows trees as a normal tree for sale. The difference is simply that they are grown in a specific way to make them suitable for bonsai. In a related myth, we have the, view that every tree is ancient and all takes forever to reach the size and appearance seen. This is also, at best, half true. There are, let's say, specimens that are hundreds or more years old. These bonsais are practically venerated relics. Most are not so old. In fact, you can reach the state where, without knowing more about the bonsai, you could legitimately believe it was many decades old in just 5 years, if everything lines up. In other cases, it can take much longer. Either way, a bonsai that looks ancient may in fact be very new, or at least relatively so. This, let's say, should be obvious, as a bonsai, like any other tree, cannot live forever. That means you do not have a constant supply of ancient trees that could be used for bonsai. In fact, at one point, harvesting trees from the wild for bonsai led to certain species in Japan practically being driven to extinction in certain regions. This is another reason why many bonsai come from a bonsai nursery and are not yamadori. Next is size. Bonsai is often perceived as being a tree the size of your palm, or maybe a dinner plate. This is true for some bonsai, but bonsai come in a very big range of sizes. Each category has its own name. A bonsai can range from the arguably smallest, this is called keshisubo, or about the size of your fingertip, that is 2.5 centimeters or about an inch, to a tree several times that size. The size will go all the way up to what is called imperial, or approximately 2 meters or 80 inches. The reason people will often misconstrue bonsai as being only the size of your hand is that the shoin, kumono, kare, mochi, and shio chumono are the most common in sizing. These are sizes typically between 10 centimeters or about 4 inches, and all the way up to 90 centimeters or roughly 36 inches. One simple reason for this is that maintaining the medium sizes we just mentioned is much easier than the smaller main size or the much larger dai or mono sizes. This difference in size can affect the price of a bonsai too. Many think bonsai are exorbitantly expensive, and this can be true, especially if you go to a nursery that carries, say, only a handful of bonsai as a sort of opportunistic sale. If you instead go to a dedicated bonsai nursery, you can buy bonsai for much less, or at least if you pay the same price, you are getting infinitely superior stock, if you don't effectively do your own bonsai by taking regular nursery stock, which is also a legitimate option. Sadly, most bonsai from a big box store are also going to be, essentially dead trees just in an okay pot, and this is probably true of those in a generic nursery where the care required for certain bonsai are just not there. Another option is often to talk to other bonsai enthusiasts in your area. They may have trees that they're willing to part with, more so if they are cursed with a green thumb that lets any cutting they put in soil take root every time. Last, we have watering. Bonsai require consistent levels of water. It's not possible to take a bonsai and simply douse it in water and it will survive. They will drown, just like a human with excessive water will. Conversely, just like a human, not enough water and they will dehydrate and die. Bonsai require very specific soil structure to ensure just enough moisture is retained for them to be okay, but all the excess water drains away and thereby avoids root rot. These are just a few of the myths, let's call them, that seem to permeate around bonsai. Some of them are more significant than others, but they all have some degree of significance. Ultimately though, whether or not you see this video before or after you make a terrible mistake is up to luck and chance, and also to some extent to the YouTube algorithm gods. But we have no say over what they do, so it'll be what it is. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing, and please do post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.